Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast. And today we're going to continue our Unsung Hero series. And this is someone who in some ways is not unsung at all. In fact, many people in Brampton in the music arts community will know Carmen Spada. But in some ways he is unsung, certainly a hero to me, because he does so much behind the scenes work, so much work underground that we just got really deep into that today. And I appreciate, I think you will too, the hard work that he does to lift up the arts, to lift up musicians, to give people a platform, especially local Brampton talent. This guy's got energy, he's got vision, he's got passion. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. We cover a lot of ground, including how musicians are, or maybe aren't sometimes, compensated well enough. I think you're going to enjoy this one, friends. Fasten your seatbelts, get ready. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast, and we have this is an amazing person. I'm so excited to have a conversation with. This is Carmen Spada. Carmen has done incredible work in our city for many years around arts and culture and music. And Carmen, let's just dive into that because you have a passion for bringing all of that to our city and have been working on that for years. I just want to say thank you. Really appreciate the work that you do. Many times I've shown up at a concert or seen you working and appreciate, or hey, Carmen organized this, and like what an amazing thing. So thank you for one. Do love to hear kind of where that's come from and what that's all about.
Yeah,
for you.
Sure. Well, Pastor, thank you for having me here and the guys and gals behind the camera who are making this opportunity possible.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're in the basement of North Brampton United Church here, and you guys have done wonderful work in the community for many years. But I think what a lot of people in the community don't know is that you've transformed a portion of your basement into a professional soundproof recording studio. And I know in COVID that you guys really set the bar for live streams, especially in this city. I know there's a lot of other churches that were trying to make that pivot, and what you were able to do with, again, the team behind that camera with your 4K angles and your multi-cameras and your sound mixing, and it's coming up from the sanctuary into the basement and rerouting. You guys set the bar.
Thanks,
and my understanding is that helped you get the studio going.
For sure.
And Nightlight Studios.
Exactly.
And
Nightlight,
the only professional recording studio in our city, Canada's 9th largest city, and we've got a full-blown professional recording studio here, soundproofed, pro team. They're Apple guys, which I'm okay with. That's the standard. And so congratulations to you for what you're doing as a church, but also for what you're doing for our arts and culture community.
Yeah, absolutely.
By filling a void that doesn't exist. So thanks for having me here today. Happy to be here. And, you talk about a little bit what I've done. A lot of so just quickly, I'm a pianist, jazz pianist, composer, educator, and I also play accordion, grew up Italian, so I have to be able to play that music. But in 2017, back in 2014, I really saw a void in the city for a jazz festival. Jazz festivals have become this kind of knee-jerk festival coast to coast. You get a lot of smaller cities that are running them, or their excuse for what they think a jazz festival is. And, I got playing on some of them, and I realized we could do something better in Brampton. I mean, being such a big city, having the space, having the arts high schools feed into that. But the issue is that in 2010 and 2011, there was a for-profit organization from Toronto that tried to run a jazz festival in Brampton. And they were for-profit, which meant they didn't have to provide any sort of auditing or answer any questions, whatever. And the previous councils and culture and everything were awarding these they weren't necessarily grants. They're almost like just contracts to the for-profit to run the event, and it folded after 2 years. So there was kind of this stigma at a city level that jazz doesn't work because we tried it and it just won't work because it didn't work. And I thought, well, what were the oversights? What was the community engagement? What was the multicultural aspect of it? None of those questions had really been asked. All we knew is it didn't work. So in 2014, I started putting this business case together to try and bring a festival to Brampton. And in 2017, we finally got awarded a community grant through the city's community grant program. And the idea was that we would kind of have to agree to be one of the last festivals of the year in the city, because we are a festival city. We're very busy with festivals. So we chose the weekend after Labor Day, always the second week of September. Nice. And so our co-founder is Joe Asensio. You may know JN Realty. Joe and Nina. It was Joe and Nina Asensio. Now it's JN Realty. They're been real estate agents for over 20 years. Nice. Joe's a broker of record. He had an office downtown Brampton. And I was introduced to him as a musician. And Joe is just, again, your passionate guy who's got all the bells and whistles, and putting all his heart and soul into being a great musician, but he's a real estate agent first, and so he's trying to get over that hump. And so he brought that business model to our organization. I brought the artistic vision and the professional contacts, and we incorporated as a non-for-profit called Be Jazzed. And so the incorporation process was in order to get the community grant funding to run the festival. That was our goal, was just get out of that first year alive, run this event. And here we are, 6 years later, now known as the largest curator of live music in the city of Brampton.
Really?
In 2022, we ran over 160 events. In 2022, we opened out of COVID in March. So we had 9 months of back to normal life. And we ran more events in 9 months than we had run in any year previous.
Holy cow.
That was a full open year, 2017, 2018, 2019. So, so we book a lot of stuff beyond jazz as well, because we're just known as curators now. So we're running a summer series that's actually hosted by the Downtown Brampton BIA that we curate. Your daughter Leah played last year. She's playing again this Saturday, by the way, Downtown Brampton. Fantastic singer-songwriter, great musician, Leah Holtham. And we've got her 5-piece band this year. Last year we had her kind of solo, but we've got her 5-piece band, so it's going to be good. But we're curating, we're putting all these different musicians in these opportunities to get paid, because there really are very few paid opportunities for professional musicians in the city of Brampton. So we are happy that as an NFP, as a non-for-profit, that we can be that conduit to getting the musicians into opportunities to play and be compensated when there's not much of that opportunity here. So we run the festival still, World of Jazz Festival, our 7th festival in 6 years, coming up September 9th and 10th, 2023. We were awarded one of the top 100 festivals in Ontario in 2022. First festival out of COVID, and then in addition to that, we have all of our regular programming. Keenan's Irish Pub, we run a jam session once a month. We have live music on Friday nights at the Brampton Golf Club. We used to do Sundays at J Red Restaurant. We have myself, I play accordion at Vesuvio's downtown Brampton every Friday night. We've got the Downtown Brampton series running Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays. Rose Theater, we've got 4 concerts coming up starting in the new season in September. So it's, we're really busy. And that's just become another facet of what I do. I'm the artistic director of this non-for-profit, which runs all that stuff, and which is already in addition to my schedule of being a professional musician, playing and teaching. So
I'd love to talk about, because those are 2 quite different roles. Before we do, a couple things. You say curator of music. What does that mean? A curator of music?
Curator, basically just like a museum curator. Here are your 4 walls, and we're going to pick a theme. French. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean French Renaissance? Does it mean French contemporary? Does it, okay. And so with your board and with your advisors, you start with a large concept, and then you whittle it down to be very specific. So when we're asked for the Downtown Brampton series, for example, 4 bands a week, 3 nights, multiple locations, what can you do? Okay, well, what's the priority? Local, Brampton. We need our local professionals and semi-professionals, hobbyists, who are good musicians, who aren't necessarily making a living at it, but very good musicians. They need compensated opportunities. So who are those musicians? What skill set are they at? Where are we going to feature? Like I always say, you don't have the Toronto Marlies playing on Air Canada Centre ice for a reason. And you have to be aware of those kind of things. Who belongs where? To properly respect both their ability and the location and the listener. You want that audience to understand that they're not going to get the same thing on a main stage as they would get in a laneway, So it's being sensitive to the whole theme, the whole concept of what you're delivering for your client, whether it's the city, whether it's the Brampton Golf Club. The Brampton Golf Club is private. You can't just walk. You and I, 30 handicaps or 20 handicaps, whatever. We can't walk on and play around there. That's private. So they have an expectation of dress code and musicians and style and volume, and so that's what a curator is. We're literally delivering specific products to those clients through music. And ensuring that the compensation is as fair as possible. One of the challenges is that even if you're born and raised musician in Brampton, or you have roots here, or you live here at some point in time, you're going to do the most of your work in the city, in Toronto. And so obviously those rates are going to be a lot higher than what you're going to necessarily get in Brampton. So a bit of a challenge is that we have musicians either back and forth, or the Toronto musicians expecting similar pay. And what we're saying as the non-for-profit, as a curator, we're saying, I think we're getting there.
Sure.
And what that takes is year over year commitment to these projects.
Yeah.
It gets community awareness that we need those sponsors. We need those people coming out and supporting and seeing the value to hopefully get those pay rates to where they need to be, especially post-COVID. When everybody sees all this inflation everywhere else and their salaries aren't necessarily moving the same way.
I agree. I just want to say thank you. I mean, this is part of a series, this podcast series over the summer called Unsung Heroes. And I know in some ways you're not unsung because people know you. A lot of people know you in our city. But in some ways, I'd say you're unsung in that you're doing that underground work that's really important, that isn't always appreciated. So I just want to say thanks, Carmen.
No, thank you.
As you mentioned, our daughter Leah, who is a musician, I just see, I'm shocked sometimes at what people will offer for pay. And I just would encourage all of us who are listening and watching this to recognize that when you see someone up there as a professional musician, they have put so much, like years of work, but also just even to prepare for that gig. They all put so much work in it. And the compensation that something gets offered, I just don't think we realize how much, let alone the appreciation we have. We're sitting there, you're having a drink, whatever, you're thinking, oh, this is so amazing, I love this. You go home, talk about it. People need to be compensated. So really appreciate what you're doing, because I think it's important. It's really important. It blesses us in huge ways.
Correct.
In huge ways.
Correct. And I think it's just quickly is that we do need a sort of value. I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day. Does our society in 2023, and I'm not talking about Brampton, I'm just talking about North American especially. Yeah. Does 2023 society and culture have any sort of value on arts and culture? And a value, I mean a literal, tangible payment method of value, like you would on an Xbox and a PlayStation. That has a ticket value, and people are willing to pay that.
Exactly.
I think what's happened is that people will always say, well, arts are not sustainable and it's not a respectable career and you can't live on it and everything. And I will say, I disagree with that for many reasons.
Absolutely.
But it has gone exponentially worse, I think, post-internet. I would say the last 20 years is when that's taken the biggest hit, because now you don't have the recording studios, which are recording the albums, which are selling at millions and millions of copies, which are giving you a royalty of that, and then you have a tour, which is giving you money, and then you have royalties from the radio, which is, so the musician, I'm talking music especially, it's my industry. The musician had many different streams of income on top of whatever extra they did. Today, those extra streams, I like to think, is kind of what I've done with my career, where performing is a stream, but running a non-for-profit, an artistic director of a non-for-profit, it's another stream, and then education is another stream, and those will all branch out as well. So performing to me is jazz music, solo piano, accordion, accompanist. Non-for-profit is jazz festival, summer series, Rose Theater, whatever. Education is online, private. That's how you have to diversify. And I agree with you completely that I don't think that we have a wholesome appreciation for the value. And you're right. I've seen some stuff that people post about, really well-known places, either, with stipends or with sort of honorariums, or with they use a special language to show that it's free or whatever. And that's, it's tough. I'm not sure how to conquer that yet, but the awareness.
Absolutely. Hey, and let's all commit to being generous wherever we can, wherever we're hiring, wherever we're tipping, wherever we're, absolutely. And encourage those musicians, because we need them. We love them. We're inspired by them.
That's the thing. We all need them. You don't realize you don't until it's gone. I think COVID really exposed that too, right? The live stream just couldn't fill that void. And if it did, we'd still be there. Everybody was dying to get back. So I'm with you on that one.
Let's go back to you being a pianist yourself. And how did that all start? Did you grow up with music? And it's one thing to dabble, a lot of people have taken lessons when they're growing up and stuff, but God brought you to a very different place with this gift that you've been blessed with. What's that journey been like? Be a musician yourself?
I appreciate that question, because I've in recent years, I guess as a young parent now, with my parents, we've had different conversations, and you get a little more sensitive about, especially our ancestry is Italian immigration. Okay. So about, my great grandparents that would have came over, and the struggle in, you're talking 1910, no language, no Google Maps, and no Serb, and no, affordable housing. You just landed and survive. And my namesake, the Spada side of my family, my great grandfather was Carmen, and he came from Eastern Italy, and landed in Sault Ste. Marie. So can you imagine 1910, 1915, 8 feet of snow, Sault Ste. Marie, 4 kids, and he was a fruit peddler. He sold fruit as his full time. Now, can you imagine getting cherry shipments in the middle of February or peach shipments? I don't know how he did it, you know, but he ended up owning an 8-plex apartment building. He owned 2, like he was an entrepreneur. He was survival. You know, it's part of who we are as Italians in this country and in our blood. And so his son, my grandfather, Romeo Spada, again, Sault Ste. Marie, and had my dad in the Sault. I'm Carmen Sr., I'm Carmen Jr. My grandfather, Romeo, the story is that we don't know where exactly, but he just came home from work one day, and he was living in his father's 8-plex apartment building, which had been all stairs. And he bought an upright piano, a Heinzmann upright grand, which are the old style ones that are like 800 pounds, solid wood, you know, when you open the fall board, the lid pops out. And he bought this piano used, obviously, and my grandmother, who just turned 100 in October, said that, you know, they had like 4 movers moving this piano up you imagine those flights of stairs in these buildings into this apartment building. And he didn't play. My grandmother didn't play. My there's no music on that side of the family. And he bought it with the intention that my aunt, his daughter, would take lessons and learn. And then my father came around years later, and the piano was still there. So, you know, my father would take lessons. My father did take lessons, and in high school he played saxophone and some woodwinds, and he was really trying to pursue professional music. He went to Laurier try to get a music degree. But he found that the theory and the composition and the harmony really, like I call it the chemistry of music, the periodic table kind of stuff, you know, it knocked him out, man. The ear training, he was not so much into that aspect as he was into the performing and the playing, you know? So he let it go as a profession, and he became a school teacher, and met my mom's school teacher as well. Cool. But in the Catholic board, he was a music consultant for 14 schools back in the 80s. So his job was going to 3 schools a day, you know, teaching recorder, doing their plays, teaching choirs. And then he got a permanent job, and he was doing musicals every year. So he'd pick Robin Hood and spend all year. So my dad was like really progressive with what he was doing with his music. It wasn't professional where it's say living on it, and his skill set wasn't necessarily, you know, honed and at that professional level, but he had this like just this pursuit to get as much out of it, you know? So I was seeing him perform at some level. And then ultimately, when you're just seeing other performers, you know, and, you know, everything, rock and roll and jazz, and there's that concept of like, well, can I do this too? So you take your lessons and all that and try and get better. But there was always that love of being in front of people, doing it for people, you know? And I think that's the number one reason why I do any of my music to some capacity, is because you're really nurturing somebody.
Absolutely.
I mean, as a pastor, you're doing it obviously at your pulpit, obviously through God. And we're doing it at our altar of piano or instrument through music, you know? I think God's in both of those. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. I totally so agree. I've said to Leah since she was little, because she could always sing, I said, God's given you a gift to bless people. And I think there's a simplicity to that, but it's also true. It doesn't matter, you know, what level you're at. If you have that in your heart, like you got to enjoy connecting with people and blessing them with that gift that you've been blessed with.
My wife kind of hit me to this a few years ago. She's like, you know, because she's obviously very religious, and she said, your instrument is an altar. It is a place of prayer. And that's hard to, like, what does that mean? Prayer, is it not, you know, like, it's like, but if that's what you're called to do, like, what is a cook? If a cook is cooking for, you know, 200 people in a barracks, in a military, or in a restaurant, like that, if they don't do that, nobody eats. If you don't use that gift at that instrument, nobody's enriched. If you don't preach, nobody hears the word of God. So that's a really, like that really knocked me, you know, down a bit and keeps it. Am I a good practicer of that? No, I fail, because I think I get so busy with the administration in all of these different streams that I don't feed myself enough, and I don't necessarily feed the community. So I need a lot of work on that. But I think that's the right approach. You know, so.
Well, it's the question I was wondering, because you clearly are in both worlds, as far as you are administering, leading an organization that's enabling other musicians to have a platform, curating. That's like awesome. But you're also a musician yourself, and you play. So how do you balance those two? Where do you get the most joy? Or maybe it's a bit of both. How do you look at those two different roles that are coming out of the same amazing person?
I don't balance it well. And that's what what I just highlighted. Like, and I think that's maybe the best part about having a wife is that she highlights that the most. It's the person who's pushing the wound all the time, is touching the salt in the wound, is her, because she's been able to acknowledge how much of my emotional and mental state is in flux depending on what aspects of the music I'm committed to. And she'll say, hey, this period when you were writing, when you had a lot of gigs, when you were on the road, when you were like the best all around man.
Okay.
But this period where you're bookkeeping and curating and administrating, like it just sinks you. So her challenge is, where are you going to cut out that piece for yourself, that personal training time, that golf? Where are you going to cut that out when you're getting sunk in the stuff that you have to do, but is really not healthy for you?
Yeah.
And I'm, very honestly, I don't do a good job at that. I haven't really learned how to do that yet because my fault is that I prioritize both of those worlds as like, there's no, and that's just my needle. It's always revving. Like there's no, because especially now post-COVID, like when the iron is hot, like we went 2.5 years with nothing, And so in a sense, you're also trying to earn back the money that you lost or you never earned, or the debts you have. I mean, that was for our industry.
Yeah.
Like there was no work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a lot of students. I mean, I taught at the University of Guelph. So obviously those positions dried up. The school was closed, kind of couldn't do it online, like for what we were doing. Yeah. But all my private studio and even my online studio, I think students of all ages were really becoming aware that this industry now becomes a hobby. It's not a valid profession. Like you were saying, it was going downhill, it was getting worse, but COVID just exposed that like you're dead now in this industry. There's just not enough money to live on, for the gigs that are paying very little and the rents that are, a lot downtown Toronto, and most musicians are living there, and then you're commuted. So students are like, well, if I'm paying for a hobby, maybe I'll get my golf lessons back instead of music lessons. Maybe I'll go and learn a language. So it's really taken a knock, and like I said, my fault is also my strongest suit, which is like I've been able to go after the things which say have kept me in the industry, like that I'm still a musician, I still support my family, I still feed my family on music. My wife was a middle school teacher, and 8 years ago we had our eldest, and she resigned, and she said, listen, my point of my education is not to teach others at this point, it's to teach our own kids and raise our own kids. Yeah. So we went on one income for the last 8 years. And obviously through COVID, I mean, that was, I would say, the most trying time of our whole marriage and my life at least, because all of our income, all of our stability always rested on me. And now like it was 90% of it was gone. So that, I think that's why I push so hard, is because I believe that it's almost like the fragility of life too. I mean, we're just it didn't have to be COVID. It could be anything. We just have no guarantee. Yeah, for sure. And the Italian approach too is, you're always thinking about that rainy day. You're always thinking about the future. You're always thinking about your kids. Yeah. And as a parent, well, guess what? That's who I am now. I always say like I'm 39, but I feel 80 because I sound like my grandmother. I look like my grandfather. Like I'm acting like them. You know,
kind of roll up your sleeves and work hard.
That's it. Hoeing tomatoes and
yeah. Well, I appreciate the work you do, my man. And so playing music, it feeds your soul. It sounds like. So tell us a bit about what happens when you play. When you get an opportunity to just play yourself, practice, when you get a chance to play in front of an audience, what's going on for you? Because it sounds like that is definitely a sweet spot for you, where you're feeling filled and full of life. And your soul is enriched. Yeah. What's that? What happens for you when you play?
Well, I'll tell you, I guess as a young person, it was, you're playing classical music and you're playing off a page and people clap and they're nice. And then you learn how to play Happy Birthday, or you learn a couple chords of a Beatles tune. So as you progress away from, say, other people's music and get the sense of like, oh, maybe I could do this, write a song or improvise. Like I remember being a young person thinking, how did Beethoven know that those notes worked? I'm taking all these lessons, but I don't know how he woke up and wrote that. I can't write that, What that leads you into, for me, in my teen years, my early 20s, was jazz music and improvisation. Because in improvisation, you are literally composing in the moment. You're creating something that didn't exist before, and it probably won't exist in the future because it's coming out in real time. It's like this conversation. Cool. This was not scripted. You're asking me questions. And this is all improvisation in a sense. And you have phrasing, you have emotion, you have louds and softs. Well, when we improvise as jazz musicians or any creative musician who improvises, all of that same thing is coming out. And what would you prefer? Would we prefer reading this off a script and say, hey, Pastor, I'm really happy to be here? Or you're hitting me with stuff and I'm thinking about it and then I'm going off on a tangent. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah, for sure.
And so a lot of the way I teach as well is like, is music through improvisation. How can you let the music guide your decision making? So for me, I build these little challenges on my performances. Even playing accordion, I'm playing in an Italian restaurant, I'm playing folk songs, you know, and even popular songs, That's Amore, Volare, things that they would know. I build in opportunities for myself to improvise because that's myself now being able to say something through music that's original. I can express it that nobody told me. It wasn't conceived.
Yeah.
You must do this, like classical music. You must. No, I want to try this. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. I mean, you saw me in May at the Fold, at the Rose Theater.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, and that's a unique gig because we're underscoring those authors.
Yeah.
But there's many, many, many moments in there where we're carving out opportunities as a band, as a trio, or as individual soloists to improvise and to stretch, create an emotion that's not on a page. And so for me, what keeps me performing and the euphoria of the performance is the opportunity to improvise and create original content to hopefully enrich and nourish that listener in a way that they say, that was cool. I didn't expect that. Why did you do this? Because I've come to know over the years that the non-musicians are more sensitive to your decision-making and your output than the musicians. The musicians will, because we have a level of understanding through ear training, they will tune out, tune in, earlier, later, selective parts. It's picking and choosing.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between the cook who goes to the buffet or the buffet lover. The buffet lover's hitting everything because it's buffet and it's free and get all you can in 40 minutes. But the cook is like, nah, I seen that. I'm not into that. So I've had better conversations and more enlightenment into how to excel my career through the non-musicians. And again, I'll say, I think my wife has done an amazing job of that. That's she'll be we have a 3-story townhouse and she'll be on the 3rd floor and she'll give an opinion about what I'm working on. I'm like, I didn't ask you, and that's why we have 3 stories, you know. But she is all into how it's making her feel.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm not a musician. I appreciate music, love music, and I think I might fall in the category you're talking about because I'm not analyzing what you're doing. I wouldn't actually even notice if you missed a note unless it was really, really bad or something like that. But I find myself really enthralled. Like he's taken us somewhere. Sometimes you can tell. I think even when people are talking to you, you can tell, okay, that's scripted. They get some scripts, right? But then, they're off script right now. This is interesting. It's just another level of interest. And I feel that too sometimes when I'm watching musicians. They're going off on this. They're taking this someplace, and you could just feel, an experience that's really, really cool. A few years ago,
I read a book called Free Play. Steven Nachmanovich, I think, is the author. It's called Free Play, and it's all about improvisation in the moment. And he used a quick analogy, and he said, have you ever gotten lost in a city as a tourist have you ever gotten lost? And if you've gotten lost, and I always think about Rome. I was walking in Rome and I did get lost. And what happened? Now you're lost. You want to find your way back. But what happened? Along the way, you saw an artist, then you talked to that person. Then you saw this restaurant you stopped in. Then you saw something you didn't script. And all of a sudden, you may have got your way back, but that new little journey only happened because you got lost. Yeah. Well, that's improvisation. Yeah. Right? You're setting off on something. It didn't work out. You explore all this other stuff and you go, well, did we really make a mistake? Yeah. What is the actual answer to all of this? The answer to it all is to have the courage to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the most important lesson I give my students of all abilities and all styles, jazz, classical, whatever, is you have to find the courage to say, I'm going to close this book and I'm going to play. I'm gonna close my eyes. I'm gonna play. I've got this wedding, and I've got to play this 10-minute introduction before we play Amazing Grace or Here Comes the Bride, and I'm gonna put this out there. That is jumping off the cliff. That's the bungee cord, and that's very, very, very hard to do because our culture in North America educates music through visual, through books. Because that's what sells. So the idea is that we have a curriculum. That curriculum is based on books, which are spread over so much amount of time. You'll take exams, you'll pay for the exam, you'll pay the teacher, you'll pay the book, and you keep paying the system because there's no gigs, there's no paid opportunities. So let's make money through sales. And when you go to India, when you go to Asia, that is not how music is holistic. It's like therapy. You move on once you can mimic your tutor, once you can mimic your teacher, because we're training through the ears. So we do a disservice here. And again, it's a long tangent, but I like to say in my studio, it's always oral. A-U-R-A-L is the word for, we always think oral, but for ears, it's oral as well. And it's the oral education to say, this is an art form for the ear. Visual art is the art form for the eye. Don't let your music be reduced to sight, because what happens is the longer you go, your ears shut down, your brain slows down. But when you're training that really early on, it's like a well-timed car. Your ears are always engaged. Yeah. What was that? Where's it going? Where would I, like, that's why listening to music is hard for me a lot of times, because I decide when to tune out because I'm exhausted. Because I am analyzing everything I heard, what I would have done, where I would have gone, why did they get to that point? It's just, I've kind of trained myself for that too, because I knew my ears were so underdeveloped, because we're so visually developed, that I've gone too far the other way. But that was a proud skill of mine. I wanted to go at it that hard, because I felt like those formative years, 7 to 18, nobody was training my ear. And I went to university, and at 18, you're sitting beside a 16-year-old on full scholarship with perfect pitch. And I'm going, what is perfect and what is pitch? So that university was the whole knocking me down and saying, wow, I got 4 years to try and get myself as heavy as I can to get out in that real world. That's where I really saw my limitations, was going to music school. So
well, I'm glad you did. And if anyone gets a chance, it's a gift. It's a pleasure to listen to you, man.
Thank you, man.
You talked about, let's go back to the World Jazz Festival. You mentioned about just winning awards. And I was thinking, what? I'm just curious, what makes a good jazz festival? What are the pieces? What are the elements? What would people expect if they came? What are you shooting for? What are you working at when you're putting together the jazz festival?
Yeah, well, you're asking the right guy, because as the artistic director, the priority is number one, who and what is on the stages. And ultimately, everybody's coming to hear those musicians. That whole schedule. For us, it's 2 days, 17 to 20 ensembles, 120 to 150 musicians, 30 technicians, 6-figure event, free to the public. That gets on top of the musicians, that you get a family fun zone, you get food trucks, you get kids stuff to do. But my priority, and this is kind of a challenge that we have in working with a board and working with other democratic positions, is that do we all agree that these stages and who's on these stages have to be the priority, and that they have to be the best at the price, at the budget that we've set.
Sure.
Hitting a demographic, over 60% of all of our bands are either musicians originally born here or residing here. We have a mandate that we have to deliver that much Brampton programming on our stages.
That's cool.
So that, back to a point we made a little earlier, so that we are compensating either residents, former residents, born and raised, to know that you can get paid for your work in Brampton.
That's amazing.
So I will say very respectfully, does that affect, let's say, a lot of the choices you would, if we didn't have that, then now we can go out and just, call the best musician across. But we've decided to not do that, so that we can prioritize our city and our professionals who don't have those opportunities. So we don't see that as a step down. We see that as a mandate and as a vision that we prioritize. So it's, to answer your question, it's the quality and the skill of the musicians that are on stage. It's prioritizing our musicians and our residents first. And it's, showing through a great board, great decisions, and great delivery that this organization, Be Jazz, is born and raised and residing in the city of Brampton. Our decisions are for the good of the city. Our event is an admission-free event. We are here for our residents. We're here for our patrons, our sponsors, and our listeners, and we're called the World of Jazz because 2 reasons. Number one, the word jazz doesn't mean today what it meant 100 years ago. And that was something we went up against when we tried to bring a festival back to the city, was, we tried jazz and it doesn't work here, because they had a very limited understanding of what jazz is. So the word jazz is interpreted globally now, because through multicultural interpretation. So you have, musicians in Lebanon, you have musicians in Israel, you have Indian musicians who are exploring jazz music through improvisation and rhythm, and then adding their cultural influences to the music. So you have the 2 facets of jazz, which is rhythm and improv, but you have the cultural influence.
Nice.
So we said we will highlight the multicultural influence because we are Canada's most multicultural city, but we will also highlight the definition of the word jazz around the world to show that it's not just what you may think it is. So that's how we got to the title. And as I said, we did two festivals in COVID, 2020 and 2021, and where the lockdowns happened both years, we were in that period where we were able to have live and outdoor.
The fall tended to be okay.
Yeah, it was open for a bit. So we got our 100 people, we got our 200 people live and outdoor, we got our patios.
Wow.
And then we got our live stream. So we did hybrids.
Amazing.
And I would say we're one of the only festivals in the world that didn't cancel. So many either canceled or went 100% live stream. And we didn't. And testimony to our board and to our group and to all of you, to our patrons, to our sponsors, to our listeners, to our audiences, and to the city of Brampton for supporting us and giving us a chance to be on our feet, to stay alive and to deliver. And September 9th and 10th, Gage Park.
At Gage Park. Okay,
cool. worldofjazz.ca. We're about 2 weeks out from launching our schedule.
Nice.
August 1st is our official festival launch, but we're just sending our offers out now. And so the not-for-profit is bjazz.ca, and then the festival is featured at worldofjazz.ca. And it's the festival especially became such a passion project in the beginning. And then it became especially with COVID, it became this huge burden. And coming out of COVID, it's come back to that passion project because I think COVID threatened all of us. Like we saw, we could have lost everything. And so maybe that's God's way of saying, like, again, be thankful, fragility of life today, and these aren't opportunities so I'm back to being like, this is the greatest thing, it's cool. Just,
that's awesome. Well, we encourage everyone to go down and check it out. I know I can't wait to be there. And let's support this culture that we want to bring to our city and enjoy it together. I love it. Let's finish with a little good news podcast, rapid fire for kids.
Okay. All right.
Best thing going on in your home and your family these days?
Well, it's funny. We're 2 days out. I just my wife bore our fourth child.
Awesome.
On what's today? Today's Tuesday. On Friday night.
That's amazing.
So we're 3 days out from that. So we've got another little girl, and so it is the best thing seeing the rest of the kids kind of galvanize around her, and seeing my wife feel really excited too. So absolutely the family right
Beautiful. Now. Love it. Best thing going on in your neighborhood community these days?
We're residents of Mount Pleasant Village, which is west side of Brampton, and we have just an unbelievable neighborhood. We have the library there. We have the skating rink in the wintertime. We've got our 2-way all-day go service now, so we can go to the Jays on Sundays. For Junior Jays Sundays. My kids love that. We've got a lot of little boutiques and pizza and barbers and coffee shops down there. A lot of young families, tons of young families out there. Obviously, our church is out there. The Old Pro driving range, I have a membership there, which is going stale this year. But we love Mount Pleasant Village and for what it does for our young families.
That's awesome. Last one, best thing going on in our world these days?
I think I'll call it just chance. The chance to do, like, wake up today and you have a chance. I always say about the fragility of life and good health, and the fact that we are in a country that we have stability, that we can wake up and we don't have military occupation, and we have a chance. You have a chance to do something. I was a big athlete as a young guy, and I always had my anxieties as an athlete was the time running out on the clock. You always want that one more play. You want that one more opportunity. And you hear the pros talk about that too, right? When they're a goal short. And for me, I have so many things I want to do with my career, and I feel like I'm just running out of time. My kids are getting older. I'm getting older, and I get down on myself for what I didn't do 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So I'm most thankful. I think the best thing in our world is that everybody in their own capacities, they have a chance. And I would say just do it, whatever it is. No point of the fear, no point of the anxiety. Be not afraid.
Right on, man. Right on. You could be a motivational speaker with your musicianship, my man. Anyway, really appreciate you. Thanks, Carmen, so much.
Thank you, Pastor. Thanks for having me.
Always, man. Always. Yeah. Friends, thanks so much. Wanted to offer a prayer to close and just pray for you and this beautiful growing family that God has blessed you with, as well as all that you're doing in our city, Carmen. Let's pray before we go.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh God, thank you. Just for the incredible passion. You can feel it as Carmen speaks about music, about art, about jazz, and the why behind it all, to bring people together, to bring blessing. I really believe that when he and others play, that you are working through them to bless us all. And so we thank you for these incredible gifts. Bless Carmen and his family. May they continue to enjoy one another and feel your love in their home. We pray for the Jazz Festival and the many events that happen through B-Jazz every week here in our city and beyond. Just thank you for the blessing that they are, the work that they're doing, and just continue to give them great joy in all that you've called Carmen and his team to do. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again,
Thanks,
Carmen.
Pastor. Thank you for having me.
For sure. And thank you, everybody, for being a part of the conversation today. God bless you and be with you, and certainly hope to see you again real soon. Man, I love him. I love that conversation. I love the exploration of what it means to sort of play the notes, from your eyes on the page, but then also what it means to listen with your ear when you're playing music and really be courageous enough to improvise, to kind of go where you're not even sure where you're going to go. And I don't know about you, as I said in this conversation, and as many of you who know me will know, I am not a musician. But I love music, and I know when I'm watching, when I'm listening, when I'm at an event like that, and you can just tell that we're going someplace. Like, this is uncharted territory. Not sure where this is going to go, but it's cool. Like, there's this experience, almost this intimacy that you experience together. I love the way Carmen expressed this experience and feeling that music can bring. Clearly, he has an incredible gift. If you have not seen or heard Carmen play, I hope you get to one day. In fact, don't forget the Jazz Festival, second weekend every July, Gage Park here in Brampton. I know I'm going to be there. I'm hoping to bring some people, and I hope you will go as well. You can find more information, bjazz.ca, worldofjazz.ca. But this is definitely worth supporting and encouraging this beautiful gift of music in our city. I got to say also, I don't want to miss this piece of Carmen's life. There was definitely a wrestling I heard with where to focus his time and energy. Definitely being a curator, one who is lifting up others and enabling others, which I think is really cool, but also having more time for his own music, for playing himself. And just many of us, I think, might be hearing this and thinking maybe it's not music, maybe it's a different industry or different area that you're in. But just that struggling sometimes to continue to balance our life and really spend time on the areas where we are filled up, where we are most passionate. And just encourage us all to pray for Carmen as he wrestles with that, but also maybe think about our own lives too, and where God is leading us, because we're always being led all the time. We're in good hands. I do say I love the commitment that Carmen has to lift up musical artists and help them. There's a sacrificial love in that. That's really beautiful, and I certainly caught that, and hope you did too. This is a guy that's spending his life making the world a better place in the areas and ways that God has blessed him and enabled him to do so. So just really appreciate that. And we got an unsung hero. I'm so glad we're doing this, guys. Don't forget those unsung heroes in your life. Reach out. Send them a note, encourage them, appreciate them, give them thanks, acknowledge them, because that's what makes the world go. And God's working through them every single day. God's working through you every day as well. So thanks for who you are and what you do. Thanks for being a part of this conversation, the Good News Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Good News with Jamie Holtum. And please, if you listen to an episode, if you watch an episode, maybe even this one, and you think of somebody who might like it as well, please share it with them. That's the way that we can share good news. Just something as simple as that. So appreciate you, love you, value. Thanks so much for being a part of this. God bless you. Hope to see you again real soon.